Welcome to Not Factory Approved. The purpose of this channel is to not necessarily show the best way of doing something, it's to show a way of doing something. And if you've been watching for a while, you know that I've learned as I go. So I want to encourage you, don't be afraid to try new things. And if you really can't stand to destroy something, then practice on something that you can destroy. And it's not a big deal. Otherwise, you'll gain lots of experience and you'll be satisfied with your results, or not, the more you practice. So keep practicing, don't be afraid. This is the diverter valve, tank selector. So front, rear, I think, or other way around, can't remember which way it sits. Here's the top for it. There's a locator pin, 1 and 2. See on there? This was completely filled with rust, so I'm glad I took that apart. I gotta clean this up too, otherwise that's all going through the injectors. I'm gonna try and get that plate off and look down inside and see make sure everything's clean in there. If not, it looks like the bottom unscrews. But I don't want to break anything, so try the top first. So here's the locking plate that holds those two valves. You can see the slots in there. It drops on and then turns slightly. And that fits against this diaphragm on the top side. So here's the valves. And they appear to be connected down below. That works. That works. That one comes up, it looks like. And there's no electrical connection on this, so I'm thinking it's a fluid flow system. It prefers one tank, and that runs out, then the valves change and you get the other tank. That's my theory. Let's see if it's true. Well, I just learned where the fuel filter is. There it is. So looks like you could probably get this off with a filter wrench, but I used a very large channel lock or water pump pliers, depending what generation you are. So I will check the flow through this thing, and I'm not going to change it yet. I will ensure the truck has some life to it before I do that. And I might, the diaphragm looks good, but I'll check it further through the light, see if there's any pinholes in there. Clean everything up, put it back together. Now I know I can change the filter quite easily. I got one of the valves out with difficulty. This one here. Again, more garbage in there, and this is even after flushing it, blowing it. So this is the retainer. There's a washer. Goes on top of the valve. You can see it there on this one. And then this clip pushes in right here. That I removed with this. Stop shaking. It's a very fine point pick. It's actually part of my electronic tools, so you need something very small to get in there and work it up. But let's have a look at this thing. See what we. I put one valve back in, so you can see how deep it has to go for the clip to hold it. It doesn't hold well if it's further up. So that's fully seated. It's got these 3 locators for the washer. It's got, so going to this one, ports have a blue, fairly thick, small O-ring. Goes down inside there. That goes on to the end of this valve. So that metal washer pushes against it, and then the shaft goes in and out. I can't do it single-handed at the moment. So, and then this black O-ring, it's here, sits down on that plastic shoulder. and the washer goes against it. And then this is the clip over here. And it has to go with the spring tabs pointing up. That's how it holds. It goes down and then spreads out. So how does this thing work? Well, here, this is all my theory. It's got a port here which is attached to one of the pickup lines. Yeah, that's a pickup line. This is the outlet to the injectors, the bigger one, and this is the return. I don't know how to get this out. I've tried. It's good and stuck. So I think it might be cast in there. It has this screw nut retained, swage nut. So this one has fluid here, which would then go through this port here. Comes in there, comes out there. So there'd be gas on top of the diaphragm. This is the top of the unit. That diaphragm sits there. That works this plate here. Goes like that. Clips onto these grooves right near the top. So that will move up and down. So that moves down with the gas at the top. So how exactly that changes flow, I'm not sure, but it should seal that one off. And then this being the return, make sure it goes back to the right tank. So it seems like it's preferring this one, which I believe is the saddle tank, and I think that's correct. So if the saddle tank runs out of gas, that part doesn't make sense yet. So this is the line that has the port. So it might be that when the pressure here exceeds the pressure in the bottom, it pushes the diaphragm down. I don't see any ports connecting there at this point though. So I have to check a little further in that. But that's one possibility. If the pressure on the top exceeds, then it will push this down, shuts off the saddle tank, and then it can draw fluid from the rear tank. It's automatic anyway. There's no vacuum lines, there's no electrical connection. It's just on pressure. One thing to note is that the return line spring is softer than the inlet spring. Not by much, but a bit. So I'm going to keep that in mind if you take these apart. It could be that this one's just defective, but that's the hole it came out of, and it's definitely lighter than this one. So heavier spring, bigger line. Makes sense. Okay, I got to take it apart again. This was not a swage, it's a valve. Works with the diaphragm in there. And I think I might have a problem. And then this one does not depress, and it should. Like this one. There it goes, and it also can come up. So, more work to be done. I can see this is going to... Okay, that's that part together. Oh, looks like the spring just popped off. Oh, for pity's sakes. What happened? Well, I got to take that apart again. But this, if you grease this piston, it slides in quite easily. There's a ball bearing and a spring inside. It just pushes it back and then you're fine. So these retain They've got grooves in them, go into here. So you put this on by lining up the big holes, push it down. You have to put the screw in, so that's why you have to do it this way. Otherwise it just rotates. You push that down, get the shafts, hook it in, and then it's solid. I didn't engage that yet, so because I got to take this other one apart. Surprises. See if this works. I think I had this washer on backwards. I think it goes cup end up. So let's see what happens. A new wrinkle in the old project. This valve fell apart. I've glued it for now, but there's no way it'll last. So I think what I'm going to have to do, you can get these for about 200 bucks Canadian, 150 US. So I think what I'm going to do is just open it up, and it'll suck constantly from the rear tank. I don't have a front tank, a saddle tank at the moment, so that won't be an issue. I'll just put a hose across the lines for one side, and then it'll be no diverter for a bit. Just be one tank. My objective here is to prove if the truck is worth fixing, not to fix everything first before I know. I'm going to put this back on. It's keyed. The port is there. 1/4 inch socket. The filter is still quite free flowing. So let's go back in. My mistake. O-ring goes in this recess in here. I'll do that. Put it back together. Tape. Don't do what I did. Take it apart again. Forgot the O-ring right there. So then you have a little port here that when you blow in here, it blows back in your face. Better air than gasoline. I did some checking last night. I couldn't find a kit for this anywhere. I did find various suppliers of the O-rings though, and it's looking like it'd be 50 to 75 bucks by the time I replace them. I will do some more digging, but I then have to look for a used valve to replace one of the pistons inside, so I'm not sure that it's worth it at this point. I'll just put it in its doctored state and make sure the truck runs, and then we'll deal with it afterwards. Because I still have windshield, tires, saddle tank, I got headlights, I got a few things to go. The tank's back in, lines are hooked up. What I did was I took the sender unit out, which needed repair anyway. The tank level sender was not working, and I had to check the pump. It seems to be working. It's got a nice filter in it, a screen filter. I did reach in there and scrub as much of the rust as I could, and then I rinsed it with some old gas I had, suctioned it out with the bottle and spray wash gun. I'll show you how that worked. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this, since the box is off, and I'll be doing the testing with the box off. I'm going to add some line here, take some of the old broken tank pump and sender pickup and put it in series with the suction line. Well, it's actually very low pressure. So this system works with a low pressure pump in the tank, which then feeds the main injector pump, which is up underneath the frame around about where the driver sits. And it does have a good filter in the diverter valve, but rather than plug that up, I just use one of these and I can observe it easily. Whereas the other one is sealed up and it's black and no way you can see inside it. So that's what I'll do there. So tomorrow should be starting day and actually running and seeing what works and what doesn't. You can see how rusty the frame is. I blew it all out and I blew all the dirt off of it and all the loose rust I could get, and flakes I hammered and chipped, broke off a bunch. It really needs to be thoroughly sandblasted, and I did that years ago on the Cadillac, and even though I had the sandblast area draped off in the shop, 5 years later I was still blowing sand out of the corners and things that I hadn't moved for a while, and sand would fall out. So I have no desire to do that again. It's structurally sound, there's no cracks, there's no holes, there's no weak spots. So even though cosmetically I'm not a big fan, I'm going to leave it. So here's my liquid suction tool. I really need a stronger bottle now that I'm doing it a little bit differently. But I put this line into what I'm trying to suck up, whether it's brake fluid or whether it's crud from the tank. You can see all the rust I picked up. And then I have a line from the wash gun, goes here. So I drilled that hole so this fits tight, it's airtight, relatively speaking. That goes to the wash gun, which puts suction on the bottle so I don't actually suck and spray gasoline or brake fluid or whatever. So this is hooked up to the airline, obviously, and the Venturi effect puts suction on the bottle. Does work, a little awkward, but beats, can't get all the fluid out of the tank. Just too many little corners that don't line up. So let's start. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe, I don't know. Hard to tell. There we go. Power. A bit unstable, the back end. Oh, the mist got worse. Oh well, head home. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, or even notify, or any of the above, or all of the above. Thank you.